Picture a staircase, narrow and steep, packed shoulder to shoulder with children. It's the evening of June the 16th, 1883, in Sunderland, England, and inside a building called the Victoria Hall, roughly 1,100 boys and girls have just been promised something wonderful. Toys. Free toys and books handed out to any child holding a lucky ticket number. So when the man on stage calls out those numbers, hundreds of children leap from their seats at once and rush for the stairs, racing down toward the one door that leads outside. And that is when everything goes wrong. Within about 10 minutes, 183 children are dead. Not from fire, not from a collapsing building, not from a stampede in the open air. They die crushed against a single door, at the bottom of a single staircase. A door that would not open. Here's the strange truth, history quietly buried for well over a century. That door wasn't broken. It wasn't locked. It was simply built to swing the wrong way. And the invention born from that mistake is something you have touched with your own hands, probably this week, without ever thinking about it twice. It's the metal bar mounted across nearly every emergency exit on Earth. Today, we're going to find out how a design choice nobody thought twice about turned a children's party into one of the deadliest disasters in British history, and how one grieving hardware salesman, decades later, finally built a lock that could never do it again. To understand what happened at Victoria Hall, you have to understand something about doors in the 1800s that sounds almost unbelievable now. Doors overwhelmingly opened inward, into the room, not out onto the street. It made sense to Victorian builders. An inward opening door kept rain and wind out. It kept the street looking tidy, uninterrupted by a door swinging into a public walkway. And at the bottom of the Victoria Hall staircase, there was an additional twist. The door had been fitted with a bolt near the bottom, left mostly closed, so that ushers could open it only part way, forcing the crowd to file out single file so tickets could be checked. It was a small, practical, forgettable little design decision. On an ordinary night, nobody would have noticed it at all. But this was not an ordinary night. As the children thundered down that staircase, the ones in front reached the door and pushed. The door, remember, opened inward, toward them, against the very direction the crowd was moving. And more children kept coming from above, unable to see or hear what was happening below, unable to stop, because hundreds of small bodies behind them were still pouring down the stairs. Within moments, the space in front of that door became a solid wall of children, packed so tightly that no one could move, could breathe, could even fall down. Adults on the scene later described trying to reach in and pull children out one at a time, but the pressure from behind was simply too great. It took rescuers a horrifying amount of time just to clear enough space to open the door fully. By then, 183 children, most of them under the age of 14, some as young as 3, had suffocated or been crushed to death, stacked against a door that had been designed, quite literally, backwards. The town of Sunderland was gutted. Nearly every family in the surrounding streets lost a child that night. Mass funerals stretched across days. A memorial was built, names of the dead carved into stone. A monument to a tragedy that should never have needed to happen. And here is the part that should stop you cold. Engineers and safety officials at the time absolutely understood, almost immediately, what had gone wrong. The inquiry into the disaster pointed directly at that inward swinging, partially bolted door. It seemed obvious. Exit doors should open outward, in the same direction people are trying to flee. Surely, you'd think, that lesson would spread instantly, and doors everywhere would be changed. But it didn't happen. Building codes moved slowly. Theatre owners resisted the cost of remodeling, and so the exact same design flaw kept quietly waiting inside public buildings all across the industrialized world. A loaded trap nobody had bothered to disarm. 20 years later, in Chicago, it went off again, on a far larger scale. In December of 1903, a fire broke out during a matinee at the Iroquois Theatre, and the audience surged toward the exits. Many of those exits, just like in Sunderland, opened inward. Many were also obstructed by heavy curtains or unfamiliar latches that panicked patrons couldn't figure out how to unlock in time. Over 600 people died, making it still, to this day, one of the deadliest single-building fires in American history. 20 years, an ocean apart, and humanity had learned nothing. The lesson from Sunderland had been written down in a report somewhere, but it had never been built into the world. That finally changed because of one man who very nearly became a casualty himself. A Chicago hardware salesman named Carl Prinzler had tickets to the Iroquois Theatre that night, but a work obligation kept him away. When he learned what had happened and why, that people had died clawing at doors they couldn't figure out how to open while flames closed in behind them, he became almost obsessed with a single idea. What if a locked exit door could still be opened by nothing more than the simple, panicked act of a crowd pushing forward? No key, no twisting a handle the wrong way, no fumbling with a bolt, just pressure, transformed directly into release. Working with an architect named Henry DuPont, Prinzler designed a horizontal bar mounted across the inside face of the door. Push it anywhere along its length, with a hand, a shoulder, even the sheer weight of a falling body, and a hidden latch mechanism disengages instantly, letting the door swing outward, with the crowd instead of against it. They patented it in the early 1900s. It became known as the crash bar. Today, we simply call it panic hardware. Here's how the elegance of that mechanism actually works, mechanically. Inside the bar sits a spring-loaded rod connected to a latch bolt embedded in the door frame. Under normal conditions, that latch holds the door shut, just like any other lock. But the moment force is applied to the bar itself, anywhere across its width, that force gets translated through a simple lever arm directly to the latch, retracting it in a fraction of a second. It doesn't matter if one calm person leans on it politely, or if 40 terrified people slam into it at once. The physics are identical. Pressure equals release. And because the door is engineered to always swing outward, in the direction people are already moving, the crowd's own momentum carries them through, rather than pinning them against an unmoving barrier. It cannot be accidentally locked from the inside. It requires no memory, no training, and no light to operate, which matters enormously in smoke-filled darkness. It converts chaos itself into the very force that saves you. Building codes eventually caught up. Fire marshals across the world began mandating outward swinging doors, and eventually, panic hardware on any exit serving a large enough crowd. Schools, theaters, stadiums, offices. It became so standard, so unremarkable, that most of us walk past dozens of these bars a week without a single thought. But somewhere underneath that thoughtlessness sits a staircase in Sunderland, and 183 names carved into a stone memorial that most of the world has never heard of. The next time your palm lands flat against that cold metal bar and the door simply gives way beneath you, you might wonder what other everyday piece of hardware around you is quietly standing in for a memory nobody talks about anymore.